On the morning of my wedding, my mom texted, "Don't wait up." By sunset, I saw the photo, my entire family on a yacht off Cape Cod, champagne in hand, smiling like I didn't exist. That was the moment I stopped being their son and started becoming something else. The light filtering through the pine trees cast soft golden shadows across the wooden floorboards of the lodge dressing room. I stood there, staring at myself in the antique mirror, adjusting a cufflink with more focus than was necessary. The mountains behind me reflected faintly in the glass, majestic, calm, timeless. It picked Aspen Ridge for that reason. Quiet, private, a place that didn't need chandeliers to feel beautiful. Claire was down the hall, probably in her dress by now, surrounded by her sisters and mom, maybe crying happy tears. She cried easily in movies, in commercials, even during our first hike together when the view opened up over the valley. I loved that about her. No mask, no pretense. I glanced down at my phone on the table. No new messages. I picked it up to double check. That's when it buzzed. Marjorie Monroe. My mother. 3 words. Don't wait up. Good luck today. No punctuation. No emojis. No explanation. Just that. I stared at the message for a full minute. It didn't make sense. I checked the name again, like maybe someone had spoofed her number. But it was hers. Same contact photo. Same number it had in my phone since college. For a second, I wondered if it was some kind of joke. A weird way of saying we're running late or we'll catch up after. But it didn't feel like that. It felt final. I turned the phone off, then back on. The message was still there, still unreadable in its coldness. A knock came at the door, and my best man, Drew, poked his head in. "We're doing the Thai thing now or later." I held up my hand. "Give me 5. He nodded, clearly sensing something was off, and closed the door gently behind him. I sat down on the bench, phone still in hand, and tried to breathe. My stomach was hollow. I wasn't panicked, just removed, like watching a movie where the main character realizes something terrible has happened, and the sound cuts out for dramatic effect. Then came the notification. Instagram, tagged in a photo by my cousin, Madison, the one who never figured out how privacy settings worked. I tapped it instinctively. The screen opened, and I saw it. The deck of a luxury yacht, white cushions, teak flooring. Everyone dressed in breezy resort wear, sunglasses, linen, sandals, champagne in hand. My parents, my sister Taylor and her husband, my dad's brother and his wife, even my godfather, a man who once told me I was like a son to him. All of them, together, off the coast of Cape Cod. The caption, "Family first. Grateful to be together this weekend." Sunset vibes, family for. Although the photo hit harder than the message. It was the kind of picture you frame and hang in a hallway, perfectly lit, everyone smiling, ocean behind them like a damn postcard. They didn't just skip my wedding, they orchestrated a getaway, a counter event, a literal family celebration on the exact day I was getting married, and they posted it, publicly, like they wanted me to see it. My breath caught in my throat, not from anger, not yet, just confusion. I didn't understand. My mother's text suddenly made perfect sense. She hadn't been late. She had been done. A knock came again, more urgent this time. "Drew. Hey man, it's almost time. You okay in there?" I stood, slipped the phone into my jacket, and opened the door. "Yeah," I said. "Let's do this." We walked down the hall toward the ceremony space, the air filled with soft guitar music and the scent of pine. Guests were gathering. Laughter floated through the open lodge windows. Claire's youngest cousin chased bubbles across the stone path. The world kept turning. The ceremony was set by the lake, under a wooden arch we'd built ourselves and covered in wildflowers. Folding chairs lined the grass. Her side was full relatives, childhood friends, co-workers, people who flew in from all over. Some I'd only met once, but who greeted me like family. My side, empty. 24 reserved seats sat untouched. Not even a placeholder cousin or distant uncle. No one. Drew looked over at me before we walked out. "You sure about this?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "She's waiting for me." Claire stood under the arch in a dress that shimmered like snow in the sun. Her dad escorted her down the aisle, already tearing up. Her mom was crying too. Claire looked at me like nothing else existed. I kept my eyes on her. I didn't scan the crowd. I didn't flinch. I focused on the woman I chose, the only person who had never made me feel like a placeholder in my own life. The officiant spoke. We said our vows. We kissed. Applause. Cheering. The lake behind us shimmered. I smiled. I meant it. The reception was small but loud with joy. Her cousins danced like they were born in a barn and didn't care. Claire's aunt gave a toast that made everyone laugh so hard the DJ had to restart the music. Our college friends took shots of bad whiskey and told stories about dorm pranks. Nobody mentioned my family. Maybe they noticed. Maybe they didn't. I held Claire's hand through it all. We danced under string lights. We ate lemon cake and drank champagne that cost way too much. I laughed. I really did. But every time I stepped away to catch my breath, that photo came back. The yacht, the sunglasses, my father raising a glass. Not one of them had texted. Not my sister, who used to call me every week after her divorce. Not my mother, who'd helped me pick out my first suit. Not even a single sorry, we can't be there. Nothing. It wasn't just absence. It was replacement. They chose each other. They chose the beach. I stepped outside around midnight, needing air. The lake was quiet now. The fire pit had burned down to soft orange coals. I sat on a bench and pulled out my phone again. The photo had over 300 likes. My uncle had commented, just what we needed. My dad had replied with a wine emoji. I closed the app, opened my notes, typed one line, Monday, pull my name from the charter, then another, freeze company cards, cancel all expense authorizations, then a third, let them feel what it's like when someone disappears. I locked the phone, stood up, and went back inside. Claire was on the dance floor, barefoot now, laughing with her niece. She looked over at me and smiled, the kind of smile that makes time slow down. I smiled back, but somewhere, deep behind my ribs, something solid was shifting, like a gear clicking into place. A quiet, perfect decision. They picked the boat. I picked silence. I met Claire in the most unremarkable place, waiting in line at the DMV in Lincoln, Nebraska. I was there sorting out a license transfer. She was renewing her expired it. We were both frustrated, half laughing at the bureaucratic mess of it all. She had this messy ponytail, a canvas tote full of sketchbooks, and a nervous habit of tapping her fingers against her thigh when she was thinking. I offered her my spot in line when she realized she'd forgotten her proof of address. She smiled like no one had done something kind for her in a while. That smile stayed with me for the rest of the week. Claire wasn't flashy. She didn't wear labels. Her voice wasn't polished. And she wasn't the kind of woman who filled a room the moment she walked in. She was the kind who made you forget you were ever in a room. She grew up in a double-wide trailer outside Kearney. Her dad, Henry, drove long-haul rigs for over 30 years. Her mom, Sandra, worked the school cafeteria line until arthritis forced her out early. They weren't educated, but they were decent. Salt-of-the-earth people who'd give you their last clean towel and apologize it wasn't pressed. Claire's world was built on eye contact, showing up, and meaning what you said. Mine, not so much. The Monroes weren't cruel. Not directly. We were a legacy family, 5 generations of Southern business owners. Old money with new ambitions. Golf memberships, custom suits, private equity portfolios. My dad, Charles Monroe, started grooming me to take over the logistics firm before I could even drive. He never said I love you. He said things like that's a solid margin, or make sure it scales. My mom, Marjorie, was the epitome of controlled elegance. She knew the exact shade of beige that screamed wealth, the kind of woman who carried herself like royalty at a wine tasting and gave compliments that somehow made you feel smaller. They weren't bad people in the obvious ways. They just believed in boxes, lanes, protocols, and Claire didn't fit. I introduced her at a holiday dinner. She brought a homemade pie. My mother barely looked at it. She said, "Store-bought crust is nothing to be ashamed of," then handed it off to the housekeeper like a charity donation. My father greeted Claire with a handshake to firm and a look to cold. When we left that night, Claire didn't say anything. She just held my hand in silence on the drive home. I should seen it clearly then, but I didn't. I told myself it was just culture shock, that they'd warm up. They didn't. The day I told them we were engaged, Marjorie sipped her coffee, set it down, and said, "She's sweet, but she's not our kind of woman." That was her version of direct. My father was more clinical. He actually asked, "Is this an emotional decision or a strategic one?" I said, "It's marriage, not a merger." He replied, "The successful ones are both." Taylor, my sister, didn't say anything. She just blinked slowly, like it told her I was moving to Mars. She texted me later, "Hope this is what you really want. Not congratulations, not even a question, just a soft dismissal wrapped in passive concern." Claire never knew the full weight of it. I shielded her. I told her they were adjusting. I even made excuses. They're just overwhelmed. They don't show emotion well. It's not about you. But it was about her. They didn't like that she came from less, that she didn't go to an Ivy, that her family didn't own property, that she was more grit than Polish. They smiled in public and whispered in private. I heard them, caught little phrases dropped like crumbs. "She's very unrefined. Her people are modest, bless them. Do you think she understands what a prenup protects?" I let it go. Too many times. Because part of me believed that love could melt it down. That if they saw how happy she made me, how much she grounded me, they'd come around. And I believed in the Monroe name. Even when I hated it, I still wore it like a tailored suit. A little too tight, but familiar. I was still hoping for some version of family it never really had. But Claire, she never needed convincing. She loved me like she had nothing to prove. She didn't compete, didn't compare. When we moved in together, she painted the cabinets herself, said buying new ones was a waste. When I brought home a promotion bonus, she cried not because of the money, but because it meant I was doing something I was proud of. She saw things in me my own family never bothered to notice. When we started planning the wedding, she didn't care about crystal stemware or calligraphy place cards. She wanted string lights, pie instead of cake, and to write our own vows. I said yes to all of it, and I said yes every time she asked if my family was really coming. I lied, gently, reassuringly. "Of course they are. My mom's just stressed. My dad's traveling, but he'll make it." Taylor said she's shopping for a dress. Every lie chipped a little deeper into something I hadn't named yet. In hindsight, the rejection wasn't sudden. It was death by 1,000 courtesies. Every silence, every polite excuse, every passive-aggressive smile. They never screamed, never disowned, never staged a confrontation. They just opted out, one moment at a time, until the wedding day, when their absence finally said what they never had the courage to, that they didn't see Claire as family, and maybe they didn't see me that way anymore either. The wind carried the scent of pine and wildflowers as I stepped out onto the stone path behind the lodge. The late afternoon sun spilled gold across the lake, and the string quartet played a slow, sweeping version of Can't Help Falling in Love. Someone was laughing, probably Claire's Aunt Jean, and a cluster of kids ran by with bubble bombs, trailing iridescent orbs into the air. It should have felt like a dream. In some ways, it was. Claire stood beneath the wooden arch we'd built together over 2 weekends last fall, hand-sanded beams tied with pine garlands and wild flowers from the meadow behind her parents' house. Her dress was simple, vintage lace, no veil, just a braid tucked behind one ear. She looked like something out of a painting you don't fully appreciate until it moves. Her dad gave a speech that choked everyone up. Her sister cried through the entire ceremony. Her mom kissed me on the cheek after the vows and said, "Thank you for choosing our girl." And they meant it. Every hug, every toast, every laugh felt like a piece of something real being handed to me. Claire's family wasn't rich, wasn't powerful, but they were present. They showed up, fully and unapologetically. My side, not a single occupied chair. The entire row of reserved seats, 24 of them, sat empty like tombstones. Place cards fluttered in the breeze. My mother's name, my father's, my sister's, even my godfather's. All lined up, all absent. I didn't look at them during the ceremony. I looked at Claire. I looked at the way she smiled when she said my name. I looked at her trembling hands when she slipped the ring on my finger. I focused on her laughter when the officiant accidentally called us Claire and Evan. I held it together. I smiled. I played the part of the happiest groom alive. But it was all scaffolding, because underneath, something was shifting. Quietly, deeply. After the cake was cut and the dancing started, I found a moment to step outside. The reception buzzed behind me. Fairy lights overhead. Claire's dad two-stepping with her mom. Claire's cousins shotgunning beers behind the catering truck. It was joy. Unpolished and real. I sat on the edge of the low stone wall near the fire pit and pulled out my phone. I don't know why I checked Instagram again. Maybe I wanted to torture myself. Maybe I hoped someone had changed their mind. But there it was. Same post. Same photo. My cousin Madison had pinned it to her story now. Everyone in white linen. Sunglasses. Champagne. Tan shoulders and bright teeth. Waves lapping at the edge of the yacht. Cape Cod looked like a lifestyle ad. The Monroes, masters of elegance. And the caption, still the same. Family first. Grateful to be together this weekend. Sunset vibes, family forever, family first. I read those two words over and over again. Then I opened the comments. My uncle had written, finally some peace. My father replied with a clinking glasses emoji. I stared at the screen until the text blurred. Not because I was crying. I wasn't. Not yet. It wasn't just betrayal. It was the intentionality. They hadn't simply skipped my wedding. They had curated their absence. Planned a statement. A message. They waited until my wedding day. My exact wedding day. To post that photo. It wasn't negligence. It was rejection. A final vote. They picked the boat. They picked the champagne and curated smiles and pristine ocean behind them. They picked each other and made sure I saw it. And suddenly, I felt clear, like someone had shut off the noise in my head. I stood, brushed off my pants, and walked back inside. Claire was dancing barefoot, cheeks flushed, hair loose now. Her niece clung to her arm and spun around in slow circles. She saw me, smiled, and mouthed, "You okay?" I nodded. I walked up behind her, kissed her cheek, and we danced like nothing had happened. But later that night, when the lodge had gone quiet and Claire had fallen asleep in our room still in her dress, feet tangled in the blankets, I opened my laptop. The room was still. I logged into the admin dashboard of our company holdings. My father had never changed the passwords. He never thought he had to. My name was still listed as Executive Vice President and Co-Managing Partner. I still had all the access, all the keys, all the levers. I didn't make noise. I didn't type hard. But by 1:15 a.m., my name was removed from the charter. I filed the initial forms to withdraw from the shared entity, uploaded PDFs into a locked folder, set flags on every expense account linked to the Monroe Family Trust, company phones, travel accounts, event stipends, gas cards, expense reimbursements, all of it queued for review. One final tab, corporate cards. I froze the master account. Then I sat back and closed the lid. The bed creaked behind me as Claire shifted in her sleep. She smiled softly, still dreaming. I watched her for a moment, the sound of pine trees brushing the windows, and thought, she showed up. That's all I'd ever wanted. Someone to show up. They didn't. So I left. Not in anger. Not in fire. Just with quiet, deliberate precision. Because some betrayals don't need screaming to echo forever. By Monday afternoon, it flipped the final switch. The holding company was now under legal audit status triggered by my voluntary exit and pending separation of assets. A quiet domino effect began. Corporate accounts flagged. Access suspended. Passwords reset. The kind of back-end chaos you only notice when you swipe a card and nothing happens. I didn't send out a notice. I didn't warn anyone. They didn't warn me before posting their little cruise. By Tuesday, my inbox was full of failed transaction alerts. Flight bookings, denied. Executive dining account, frozen, gas cards deactivated. That evening, the Monroe Holdings group chat, which I still had silent access to, lit up like a Christmas tree in hell. Taylor, is anyone else having card issues? I tried to check in from my return flight and it bounced. Uncle Grant, my hotel reservation didn't go through. Thought the company covered this. Dad, what the hell is going on? Ethan, I didn't reply. I was eating breakfast for dinner with Claire still in sweatpants, hair up in a towel, giggling about how we'd burn the pancakes. The chaos didn't touch us. It couldn't. ID already stepped out of the storm. By Wednesday morning, the Monroe family was collectively realizing something was very wrong. That's when he came. 7:02 a.m. Loud, violent knocking against my condo door in downtown Denver. Not a buzz. Not a polite knock. Pounding. I knew without looking. I opened it slowly. Coffee mug in hand. Barefoot. Still in a t-shirt. He was standing there in designer slacks and a monogrammed dress shirt. Not even a coat, just fury and entitlement. Freshly imported from Cape Cod. His face was red. Not sunburned, humiliated. Are you insane? My father barked, pushing past the threshold like he still had rights here. You stranded us mid-trip. Your mother's card got declined at dinner. Taylor had to pay the hotel bill at her personal Amex. I took a slow sip of coffee and leaned against the counter. He kept going. You froze every account linked to the company. Flights, operations, payroll. I had to explain to 3 vendors why we missed payments this week. I said nothing. Do you understand what you've done? You've humiliated me. You've sabotaged your own family. Over what? Because we didn't come to your wedding. There it was. I looked him dead in the eyes. You picked a boat, I said. I picked a future. He blinked. Just once. Then laughed, bitter and clipped. You're being emotional. That's what this is. You're throwing a tantrum because your feelings got hurt. I tilted my head. No. I made a choice. He stepped closer, finger pointed. You think you're punishing us. You've crippled the business. Your sister and her husband just closed on a new house. You think cutting off the trust mid-month doesn't have consequences. You're unraveling your own legacy. I took another sip of coffee. Calm. Steady. You mean your legacy? That's when his voice dropped. I built that company from nothing, he hissed. You think you're entitled to blow it up because of one bad weekend. We gave you everything. The name, the position, the life. And this is how you repay us. I let silence stretch between us. Then I said, no, you didn't give me anything. I earned every damn inch of it, while you were golfing and taking credit. He stared at me like he didn't recognize the man in front of him. The charter's already changed, I said. My shares are under third-party control now. If you want them back, you'll need to buy them. Cash. Market rate. He blanched. You're serious? I nodded. And the cards, the flights, the stipends, they're not coming back. He shook his head slowly. What do you expect us to do? I leaned in slightly, just enough to let it land. Figure it out. Then I stepped back, reached for the door, and gently closed it behind him. His voice rose on the other side. Ethan, you're making a mistake. You don't walk away from family. I locked the deadbolt and walked back to the kitchen. By the time I sat down, Claire had emerged, still groggy, wearing one of my shirts and rubbing her eyes. Was that your dad? Yeah. Everything okay? I kissed the top of her head. Better than ever. That night, I got a call from a woman named Jillian Myers, head of our at a firm in Seattle. Sorry to bother you, Mr. Monroe. You were listed as a professional reference for Taylor Monroe. She applied for a vice president position here last week. I nearly laughed. She claimed to be managing director of Monroe Holdings for the past 4 years. Jillian continued. Said you could speak to her leadership performance. I was quiet for a beat. That's not accurate. She said, voice sharpening. She never held that role. She was a non-operational family stakeholder. No executive authority. She hasn't participated in company strategy or oversight, not ever. I see, Jillian said, sounding more alert now. I thanked her for the call and hung up. Then I sent Taylor one text. Don't use my name again. No punctuation. No warmth. She didn't reply. But 10 minutes later, Her LinkedIn profile vanished. 2 hours later, our shared cousin removed a brunch tag that had her in it. The silence said enough. They were unraveling, not in flames, but in little, controlled collapses. And for once, I wasn't rushing to put out the fire. I was letting it burn. The email came on a Tuesday morning. Ordinary. Grey sky Tuesday in early spring. Claire had just left for a design consult. I was in my office, coffee going cold, finalizing paperwork for a startup he'd quietly invested in. The subject line read, "Private legal matter attention. Ethan Monroe." It came from a small firm in Boston. I almost deleted it, assuming it was a phishing attempt or some residual fallout from the Monroe business closure. But then I saw the name, Edwin R. Monroe Estate. My grandfather. I hadn't heard that name spoken out loud in years. Had died a decade ago. Complications from a stroke. Funeral was stiff, formal, rich in etiquette and completely hollow of feeling. My father gave a rehearsed eulogy. My mother wore pearls and didn't cry. Taylor checked her phone during the burial. I remember standing there, listening to the wind, feeling more connected to the trees than the people around me. But Grandpa Edwin had always been different, quiet, reserved, the kind of man who kept his affection small and his promises large. When I was a kid, he'd sneak me baseball cards and let me drink black coffee from a mug that said "World's okayest grandkid." He used to say things like, "The ones who talk about family values the loudest usually have the least." Now, 10 years after his passing, I was staring at an email from his lawyer. I opened the message. The body was brief, legal, but clear. A secondary trust had been created in my name. It was contingent on two factors. I had to sever all direct financial ties to Monroe Holdings, and I had to do so before my 35th birthday. I was 34 and 10 months old. Attached were documents verifying the transfer, property titles, stock portfolios, art appraisals, a 2-story brownstone in Savannah, a safe deposit box containing rare vintage stock certificates from pre-war companies still active today, an entire warehouse worth of mid-century artwork, grandfather's private collection. The trust had been hidden from the rest of the family. Edwin had quietly moved assets into it after a private falling out with my father. According to the attached legal memo, he had deep concerns about the future of the family's values and internal leadership. Claire came home to find me still sitting in the same spot, unreadable expression on my face. "You okay?" she asked, slipping off her coat. I think someone chose me," I said. She frowned. "What do you mean?" I turned the screen toward her. She read in silence. When she got to the letter at the end, she covered her mouth with her hand. Typed, old school, signed only with his initials. "If they choose legacy over love, walk. You'll know where to find me," she cried. Not for the money, not for the property, but because anyone had seen us for what we were. Not broken, not disposable, just quietly real. That summer, we rented a lakeside cabin in Montana, Flathead Lake. No cell reception, no schedules, just a long dirt road, a hammock, and 2 chipped coffee mugs we bought at a gas station on the drive-in. One night, we sat on the dock with our feet in the water, the sky smeared with stars, no sound, but distant frogs and the hush of waves. Claire leaned her head on my shoulder. "Do you think you'll ever talk to them again?" she asked softly. I didn't answer right away. I watched the sky, thought about that yacht, that photo, the empty chairs at our wedding, the silence after everything fell. Then I said, "They already said goodbye. They just didn't say it out loud." She nodded, and we stayed there in silence. Not broken, not bitter, just done. And for the first time in my life, done didn't feel like an ending. It felt like freedom. If this story hit something in you, if you've ever chosen peace over permission, or walked away to protect what really matters, subscribe to Open Secret Stories. We don't just tell what happened, we tell what it meant. One quiet betrayal, one sharp turn, one silent goodbye at a time. New stories every week. Your next chapter might already be here.